My next guest is a member of Congress from the Hoosier State. Representative Trey Hollingsworth sits on the House Financial Services Committee and has a small business background. His first job after graduating from business school, renovating and rehabilitating abandoned industrial sites. He worked with scientists and chemists. Welcome, Congressman. It's great to talk to you. I hate to take you back to your far past, but I was intrigued that you actually worked with chemists. You built, as I understand it, an aluminum manufacturing operation, and I just like members of Congress that interacted with scientists at one point. So give us a little bit about that background and how it has influenced your thinking about science today.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you asking the question. And look, my experience in business, in interacting with scientists of all walks of life, is that we have so much talent and capability in this country, so much stored up opportunity for us to be able to magnify going forward. If only we can enable our scientists to be able to make further technological advancements and then allow businesses to use that basic research, that basic technology, and make it practical in people's lives so that we can better the American people through those scientific technological advancements. And so it's so important to me to make sure that we continue to pay that forward in every way possible through legislation, through funding, so that we get to better outcomes, not just for today, but for centuries to come for Americans.
Well, when you and I first met last year, we were talking about this very subject, about China, about Russia, about the United States, what different countries were doing, India, investing in the development of PhDs in human capital in science, but also AI and quantum. And I'm interested in whether or not you think the United States today, as it's packaged on the science front and looking at its assets and how those stack up against some of our competitors in the world, are we okay where we are, or do we need to do more?
We definitely need to do more. Look, the reality is we are the technological leaders around the world, but that is not a matter of destiny. It is a matter of our choices every single day. Will we continue to do the right things to foster more innovation in this country versus elsewhere? And as I've said over and over again, it starts with education. Talent and erudition are going to be the key ingredients to technological advancement in the 21st century. And I want to make sure that we have the best education system, whether that's K through 12 or our higher education, that attracts talent from around the world and raises talent right here in this country. And I want to continue to see us lead the world in education so that we can lead the world in technological innovation.
What do you think the role of Congress in this needs to be? You have National Science Foundation, you have the National Institutes of Health, you have other, the Department of Energy science programs. And as I understand it, there's 17 different committees and subcommittees that have jurisdiction on the science film, and they don't often coordinate. Right now, NIH has a very big budget. It's very much in the news, but it's being asked to do more and more in the non-health space than maybe, the NSF side. So do you think there needs to be a rewiring of the legislative piece of authorization and appropriation on some of the things that the government is doing on the science front?
I absolutely do. Making sure that every committee is focused on this aspect of our competition with our near-peer competitors around the world is hugely important, but also centralizing so much of the information, so much of the funding, so that there's not redundancies that waste taxpayer money, but also to ensure that we're maximizing advantages where we may find them. I think this is hugely important for Congress to focus on. We have to create an environment that enables prodigious scientific advancement in a wide variety of fields. And it's up to Congress to make sure that we're focusing on education, like I said, that we're focusing on funding basic research, but also that we're creating an environment where there can be dissension, where openly we can criticize conventional wisdom. As John Wheeler, a famous physicist, once said, ensuring that scientific progress moves forward is about a clash of ideas, not an accumulation of facts. And I think it's important for us to remember that so that we have everyone participating and questioning conventional wisdom to be able to make large-scale leaps forward and ensure our advantage today is our advantage tomorrow.
You just said something so important about the clash of ideas and looking at it not just as a linear step forward. That really fits in my construct of what, how science works. And we're at a time right now where science is in the news. There's a lot of politics about science, and there's people feel an immediate need for a vaccine or, for a payoff. Science doesn't go in straight lines, does it? I mean, there's failure in science. There's learning. There's a commons out there. I mean, as you sort of see this debate evolve, you've had experience with science. What do you think the public needs to understand about scientific method and process that we ought to talk more about?
Wow, that's a really deep and thoughtful question. I think it's so important for us to understand how science has progressed over the last 100 years and have a view on how it is likely to progress going forward. As you said, there are likely to be tremendous failures, periods where we don't see much advancement, then periods where we see tremendous sudden advancement. And I think also making sure that we recognize the boundaries and limitations of science. I've always said that pure science is probably an exercise in intellectual ability alone. But applied science necessitates the involvement of stakeholders, the involvement of policymakers to make trade-offs that are important to the American people. Just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should do something. I think it's tremendously important that we continue to talk to the American public about A, the importance of science going forward, B, how do we facilitate more scientific advancement, C, what will that scientific advancement look like, and then D, what are the limits and boundaries of what science can tell us, what science can predict about the future, and why we need policymakers, why we need the American people through their representatives helping to make the important trade-offs for scientific discoveries going forward as well.
You know, I'd like to get your insights into how a topic like this translates into, you know, a national priority here in Washington. It's been very interesting watching the conventions. And on the whole, you know, science popped up every once in a while, but, you know, it was about healthcare or about right to try, you know, new methods in cancer or about insurance. But it really, I mean, you didn't hear a lot about, you know, our efforts to go to Mars. You didn't hear a lot about, you know, what are the next generation immunotherapy opportunities? What is the next, you know, array in, you know, what are the next GPSs that might come out of there? So I find this fascinating that we talk about this as a priority, but then when you look at these national moments where both parties, Republicans and Democrats, kind of neglect it a little bit. And so if you were running for president, would have it a higher priority.
Right. It would absolutely have the highest priority. I think in everything that we're doing, in every aspect of our national effort, we need to be focused on how we are advancing ourselves, our people, and frankly, the entire world technologically. This is hugely important because it underpins so many aspects of our modern life, and it bears the fruit going forward of how we might be able to live even better for all Americans, for all humans across the globe. And I want to make sure that this is invested in. I want to make sure it's nurtured. I want to make sure that we recognize the boundaries thereof. But ultimately, I want to make sure it's constantly at the forefront of our mind how we can compete with other countries, how we can compete with ourselves, how we can compete with previous generations to ensure that we live better in every successive generation because we continue to make the advancements necessary. And as I said at the very beginning, our technological edge, that which has made this the home to innovation around the world, that is not a matter of destiny. It is not manna from heaven. It is by virtue of our decisions in investing in our education, in investing in basic research, in creating an open environment where dissent is tolerated. All of these things have contributed to where we are today, and I want them to continue to contribute to where we can be in the future.
Congressman, you won an award in Indiana called the Innovator in Biotechnology Award. I was fascinated by that, and you won that award before the pandemic hit. So I'm interested in how you look at the biotech world, because we're all looking at the biopharmaceutical world today to save us. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We've had some steps forward that some are critical of, like, you know, making convalescent plasma available to people, looking at various kinds of things, and people are worried. Some folks are worried, oh, hey, let's not, you know, curtail the scientific method and scientific process, make sure things are safe. But yet there are these jumps out there, and I'm just sort of interested in that ecosystem of the biotech world as we're looking at therapeutics and vaccines. Given your insights into that area, are there things that we're not doing from a policy perspective that we should be doing to get to a healthier, safe place that's innovative and hold all those equities together?
Absolutely. Well, you said exactly the right thing. We've got to hold all those equities together at the same time. We've got to ensure that when we develop this vaccine, as we develop this vaccine, that it is safe and efficacious at the same time, because that inspires Americans to go and get that vaccine to minimize the transmissions of this disease from person to person. But the reality is, Steve, we have been a leader in biotech for the last 60 years. We have tremendous talent all the way across this country in basic research. And then we have unbelievable capabilities in taking that basic research and making it into drugs, therapies, treatments, protocols that have enabled and empowered Americans to live ever longer lives when adjusted for accidents, when adjusted for substance abuse. And I think it's tremendously important that we recognize the strides that have been made. But as you said, Steve, the tremendous work we have before us. I meet with biotech firms every single day, and one of the things I continue to hear from them is that a lot of the low-hanging fruit has been done. You're not likely to get a cut and die of an infection tomorrow. But Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative diseases are going to cost the federal government trillions of dollars over the next 10 years if we don't find cures, if we don't find treatments that delay the onset, if we don't find other opportunities to ensure we biologically push back against neurodegenerative diseases, cardiovascular diseases, other chronic diseases. Certainly, look, biotech has been the center of everyone's attention given this acute crisis we're in. But the reality is they have been doing tremendous work decade after decade in empowering Americans to live healthier lives longer than ever before. And I couldn't be prouder of those in district that are doing that and those sea to shining sea that spend their lives researching these cures.
Well, Representative Trey Hollingsworth, I really appreciate you laying out that horizon of other real challenges, because as we grow older, some of these major health issues are still lurking out there, and that is beyond the agenda we have today. Really appreciate your time and insights. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Steve.